Good evening YouTube, Will again here to talk to you about all things music, specifically album reviewing, and we're going to do some discography reviews as well on this channel. Remember to subscribe, like, comment on any of the videos and let me know if there's any albums you specifically want me to review or any discographies you want me to have a look through and give my opinions on. To get the ball rolling, one thing to get out of the way is yes, I have had my hair cut. During the recording of this video, it is the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic, and in the UK the hairdressers have only recently just opened, hence why I'm looking a little bit light up here. Now we've got that out of the way, we are going to be talking about another album today. As you know, we've done 2 album reviews so far, and considering my music taste is very heavy, I like Black Sabbath and Guns N' Roses, as you've seen on this channel thus far, as well as like Metallica, Avenged Sevenfold, all that really heavy kind of music, even into the more extreme side, stuff like Carcass, Slayer, even a bit of Lamb and God as well, and the occasional bit of melodic death metal. You would generally know that I am very much into heavy metal and hard rock. But the first 2 albums we've done have been, we've done Spandau Ballet, an 80s pop new wave group, and we've done Massive Attack, a 90s trip hop group. Well, today this is the first album review we're going to be doing from the heavier side of music, and it's actually a pretty big one. We're going to be talking about an album that is 20 years old this year. It is perhaps the zenith of the new metal movement of the late 90s to early 2000s. I say that in terms of album sales, in terms of worldwide recognition. We'll be talking today about Linkin Park's debut, Hybrid Theory. Well, Hybrid Theory is obviously very much a new metal album in its true sound, and the way the entire thing was recorded. We've got Chester Bennington doing the singing, you've got Mike Shinoda doing all the rapping, and the rest of the band throwing down very heavy music along with Mr. Hahn's turntable. This is very much a new metal album in the truest sense. It's gone diamond in America, it's sold millions upon millions, and let's face it, tens of millions of albums right across the world, and it is recognised as one of the most important albums of the new metal movement, and actually I think of the entire heavy metal community of the last 20 years. Right, let's get straight into it. As you know, we're going to go through this album in track order, and we're going to be starting obviously track 1 right through to track 12. So let's get into it. So, Hybrid Theory, we begin with the song Paper Cut. Paper Cut is one of the singles from the album. I think it's a fantastic opener to a really strong record overall. It starts with that kind of turntable DJ kind of sample, and then it kind of kicks in with that massive guitar riff and that whole guitar production, whole band production. You then break into Mike Shinoda's rap with then Chester Bennington joining him on the choruses as well. One thing you'll find with Hybrid Theory, which didn't do too much after this album, especially after the second album, Meteor, is that you'd have the songs that are more weighted towards all Mike Shinoda and the rapping style, and songs more towards the Chester Bennington kind of singing and screaming he does. This is definitely much more of the Mike Shinoda kind of song. It's a great one to start the track off the album. It had a video where they're kind of set in the house, it's all kind of moving around. The band kind of stay in the living room, the rest but Chester and Mike kind of move around the house a little bit, and it's all a bit strange, a bit CGI, because that was what was big from the era. Ultimately, I give it an 8.5 out of 10. It's a very great song to start off, and it's a very incredible album, really. Track 2 is One Step Closer. This is perhaps one of the 2 mega singles from the album. I think it was the first single from the record as well. I always remember that music video. It was played on Kerrang when I was younger a lot, even though at that point it was like an 8-year-old song with the Chinese ninjas and the green kind of like subway background. But the song itself, this is definitely a bit more of a Chester kind of Les one. He sings a lot of the verses, and he actually sings the majority of the chorus with Mike Shinoda joining in a little bit. And it's the first time we really get to hear Chester's real kind of impactful scream that comes from right at the back of his throat, and actually probably right down the scale all the way out in one just absolute mental hit. The guitar riff on it is catchy as any guitar riff I think through history. Obviously it's not as easy to play because you have to detune, because these guys were using things drop C and even drop C sharp standard tunings as well. Versus some of the other big iconic riffs where they've done the E standard, so anyone can kind of learn to play this quite quickly. But it's a great riff nevertheless. Again, like Paper Cut, I'll give this a 9 out of 10. It's 2.5 minutes long, but it's 2.5 minutes that just keeps you on this absolute freight train right through the entire song. Track 3 is what I get to perhaps my favourite of the non-single songs from the albums, you know, the ones that there was never a single, but definitely a big one, and that's With You. I always like the intro, how it kind of starts kind of slow and then it kind of builds and builds and builds, and then it kind of gets this big momentum. You then get Mike Shinoda coming in with incredible lyrics on that particular, on those verses as well, and he's got a great flow for the entire album with his vocals and his rapping style that just kind of builds and builds and builds and kind of keeps you moving. And then Chester comes in with those big choruses as well, as always, as he really should do. We get the bridge on it actually is very good as well, and it also builds out with just that very catchy chorus and that kind of amazing kind of like DJ guitar kind of duo as well, and the drums on it actually is very good on top of that. Again, I'll give this a good 8 out of 10. I know I'm giving these a high ranking in terms of the songs, but nevertheless, this is it's very hard not to kind of rank these songs particularly low on this album. So this is an 8 out of 10 track. It's one I wish they would have played had it been still going played more on the set list, but nevertheless, it's a really good one. Track 4, we get to Points of Authority. Points of Authority is again one of the singles from the album, one of the last kind of singles they released for it, just to kind of help promote just how big that album was. It's definitely once again much more of a Chester Bennington led track, but it does have Mike Shinoda coming in. That's one of the most catchiest parts of the entire album. You know, forfeit the game before somebody else takes you out of the game. I put your name to shame. That kind of lyric as well is one that you find yourself just repeating for the day once you've heard that song. Otherwise though, Chester sounds absolutely amazing on the vocals on it. The entire production is really good, and then you get that last chorus at the end. You got Mike kind of throwing in his rappy bit and Chester throwing in his own vocals on top. I'll just give it a 7.5 out of 10 because it is a little bit kind of samey after a while, but it's still, because it's quite a condensed song, it still has enough of an impact to kind of make you really want to go into it in a good way. Track 5, we have Crawlin'. And Crawlin' is one of the ones that initially I didn't particularly like, but as time's gone on, it's really grown on me as a song. Very much a Chester Bennington led track. It's one that really had a lot of screaming, and I think this is the first time we really see that kind of more inner, kind of darker element to his own psyche, I think, really on that song. Obviously about crawling out of crucible to breathe. It very much talks about depression, very talks about trying to get away from the very negative sides of his life and his experience. All the lyrics on this album are from a very personal standpoint. One of the sort of real staples of the new metal movement was, instead of like power metal talking about fantasy and Dungeons and Dragons and death metal talking about gore and destruction, new metal was very much talking about your own personal feelings. And Crawling, I think of all the tracks on here, is the one that really hits home with it. Again, it's actually a very short track. Again, I think it just comes in under 2 minutes, but it has it is actually a very simple composition. But it's intro, verse, chorus, and you're out. But Chester on that just sounded absolutely amazing and just kicks you right in the guts with his pain in that particular song. I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10 because, like I said, it's not one I initially gravitated towards. It has grown on me over the years, but I feel like there are some slightly better songs on here. Yeah, but nevertheless, great song, obviously. Track 6, when we get to the middle of the album, and this is admittedly where I kind of fall off the edge with the album here, only for these next couple of tracks. And track 6 we get to Run Away. This is one of the very few that I can imagine was a little bit of a throwaway track in my opinion. It's a great track overall. Obviously, it's about trying to run away from your problems. Again, a little bit more of a Chester-led kind of one, but still got a lot of Mike in it himself. I'm trying to keep and hold the hip hop kind of elements in the group as well. There's not a lot I can say about it because it's one that only because I'm talking about it right now, it's kind of replaying in my head. It's got a good riff on it, absolutely, but it's got a very heavy kind of harshness to it, which I do like as a metalhead. But ultimately, I was giving it maybe a 7 out of 10. It's not because it's a bad song, but it is a good one, but it's just not a particularly memorable one compared to some of the others. Actually, no, scrap that. I'm going to give it 6.5 out of 10 for that reason. It's good, but it's not great. Track 7, we get to By Myself. Again, this is one where actually it's a bit of a 50-50 split on the Mike versus Chester kind of game on this one. Mike is kind of like, it's almost like a call and recall and reply kind of game with them. And Chester does a big real scream on it, but on the actual sort of on the pre-chorus and the bridges on this one as well. But I always found the chorus a bit forgetful. you know, and it's a bit kind of commercial, a bit kind of wishy-washy. So ultimately I'll give that particular one a 6 out of 10. But we get to track 8, which is actually, again, one of the other mega songs from the album, and it's perhaps the most recognisable Linkin Park song ever, and that, of course, is In The End. Anyone who knows In The End, which is probably anyone who's watching this, would know this track. It's, again, a 50-50 kind of split between Mike and Chester in terms of who takes the lead on it. First half is very much more Mike Shinoda, because he gets 2 verses where he has his rap section. Chester comes in with that mega sized chorus on top of it, and then you've also got then him taking on the bridge and then the chorus at the end. The piano riff on it as well, again, is one of the most recognisable piano riffs of the 21st century. Yeah, you can't really argue this song. Once you've kind of get into it, it's incredible. I give it a 9 out of 10. The video for it at the time was amazing because it's using all the modern tech CGI, but now it looks incredibly dated, but it's still a good video. And that's probably the only real drawback of the song is the video. That's no comment on the song itself, of course. Yeah, but yeah, In The End, mega song, highly recommended. It's again, it's essential listening if you want to get into Linkin Park. Track 9, we get to actually one of my favourites from the non-single parts of the entire album, and that is A Place In My Head. That guitar riff is absolutely fantastic in my opinion. It's got a bit of an oriental, like a better phrase, kind of feel to it, and then you get that kind of really heavy bass and drum kind of kicks it on top of it, and then Mike comes in with his raps and start, and then on top of that then you get again Chester coming on the chorus and really taking control of that entire song. Fantastic, great little song. I give it a good 7.5 out of 10. I've always imagined a kind of like, whenever I can see in my head if they was the band performing live, I always thought Chester would be kind of running in the background and Mike kind of running in the foreground, like say Chester's upstage, Mike's downstage, and they're kind of doing that with each other. It's a really, really good song. Again, really good guitar riff on it that kind of drives it through. Track 10 is Forgotten. Forgotten's again one of the kind of more okay tracks on here. Again, it's very much a kind of call and reply from Chester and Mike, and it actually works really, really well. From the top to the bottom, top I stop, and it's a really, really good song. Again, kind of 50-50 in terms of who takes lead on it. You know, again, it's the last of what we hear of Mike rapping on this particular album as well. Really strong song, and I think actually quite underrated in terms of its composition skill level. I think it is a really, really good song. I actually give it a respectable 7.75 out of 10. Because, you know, again, it's not one of the mega songs on here, but it's definitely one worth listening to. Track 11, we get a little bit of a break. We actually get an instrumental courtesy of DJ Mr. Han. As instrumentals go, actually, while it's not quite Metallica, Call of the Cthulhu or Orion, where it has that very impactful moments on there, it is actually a really cool instrumental, and I think it's the best that Mr. Han ever did within Linkin Park soundscape. I say that as if he's done anything outside of it. I don't know if he has or not, but within Linkin Park, it's a really, really good instrumental, and quite a nice break from the rap and the screaming and the singing overall. And actually, a lot of the band are not particularly present. It is a Mr. Han solo kind of piece with a lot of all the samples he uses on it. It's really good as instrumentals go. You know, it's definitely one that kind of sticks out to my head. I give it a 6.5 out of 10 though, because it's not a particularly strong song on the album. It's also not one they performed live at all, apart from when they did the album start to finish at Download 2014. But like I said in this album, there's not any particularly bad songs on here, and this is not a bad track at all. Definitely worth a listen again, particularly going through this album. And then finally we get to track 12, which is Pushing Me Away. And I always felt Pushing Me Away was a bit of a precursor to Numb or Meteor. It's the final track on the album. It's the one that has a lot of Chester Bennington coming to the front. I think it's been foreshadowing to where the band would go, with Chester being much more of a lead vocalist, and then Mike becoming a bit more just the rest of the backing band, to where obviously the background from the essential songwriters. Chester, I think, has a fantastic lyric on this particular song, and the way he sings it, I think, is absolutely instrumental. very, very ethereal, very builds up on itself, and it has this fantastic kind of building momentum and hitching to that really big chorus overall. A little bit of Mike Shinoda that pops up on the bridge as well, and in terms of his rapping, but generally speaking, it's a chesty-led track, and I think it's one of the best what he does for us in terms of the lead track in the album. It's incredibly underrated. I know it was one they do perform a fair bit on, they had done rather, on and off throughout their career, but generally speaking, I think it's one that they should have pushed a lot more. And like I said, if you listen to this and listen to Numb, you can see how this was definitely the precursor to what Numb was meant to be, and also then became perhaps their biggest song. So yeah, I would give it an 8.5 out of 10, purely because it's just that great. I mean, it could have been a little bit better in my opinion. I don't know how, but you feel like they could have been pushing more towards something else. But that's something else. Obviously, we'll find out on Mutual was Numb. So 8 out of 10 for Push Me Away. And that is Hybrid Theory. Kind of, because so many tracks, I want to kind of keep these album videos to at least under 20 minutes, sort of around the 15-20 minute mark. But generally speaking, though, you do get an understanding of what I think of each track anyway. Really recommend this album overall. I would give it a 8.5 out of 10. It's one of my favourite albums. I think they've been definitely from the 20th century, probably of all time. I was at Download 2014, so I got to see them do this album start to finish live, and it was, without being too over the top, it was definitely one moment that changed my life, and I thought it really changed my opinion on Linkin Park more than anything as well. I didn't like the sound they kind of went to later on, but this particular era, Hybrid Theory, I think is an essential listen if you want to get into rock, you want to get into metal, you want to get into hip hop. It's definitely an essential one, and it's one to start with. You can see why this has sold 20-30 million albums worldwide. So yeah, I'd give this album an 8.5 out of 10. Highly recommend. The only things I can improve on is just simply just a few of the songs to be a little bit better, a bit more memorable. But when you're doing 12 tracks, all of which is instrumental, you're not going to have every single one hit and kind of ball out of the park, as it were. Okay, right then, well thank you for watching. Yeah, please remember to subscribe and like the video, subscribe to the channel of course, please do comment, let me know if anything you want to see in particular, feel free to give me feedback how I can make these videos better as well. Okay, next time I think we're going to go back to do another discography. Now I've done a couple of album reviewing, then after that was if we could then try and do some more albums as well and see how we get on. Until then, thank you for watching.